Peter Cardwell has graced us with his presence.
Apologies
We're
for that.
pleased to see you. What are you doing, on a call or
Where
something?
you been?
Expecting you minutes ago, son.
No, I was told 20 past, but there we are.
We're glad to have you here anyway.
Yes, good to be here.
Well, what should we kick off with? Let's kick off with Thatcher and Starmer.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
this idea that, first of all, Starmer writes this article in the Telegraph going, she was a conviction politician, she had entrepreneurialism, she really changed the country. I mean, this is a column he's written for the Daily Telegraph. We know the sort of readers that they have. And then Pat McFadden, who is, the chair of the Labour Party.
Yeah, he's running the election campaign for the Labour Party,
Has turned around and said, yes, and Sir Keir Starmer's just like Margaret Thatcher, a real conviction leader. I mean, pull the other one, right?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, 4 years ago, Keir Starmer was saying that Jeremy Corbyn should be the next leader of this country, should be Prime Minister. I call me old-fashioned, but I think Jeremy Corbyn has slightly different politics from Margaret Thatcher. I've picked that up in my years of covering politics. But certainly here he is in the Sunday Telegraph, parking the tanks on the Conservative Party's lawn, actually across the page from Bill Cash, who was writing another article who's about the most sort of on the right of the Conservative Party, long-term opponent of many things Keir Starmer wants. But there he was writing about his admiration for Margaret Thatcher and talking about Tony Blair as well, talking about Clement Attlee too. But at the same time, there was, I think people are very shocked by this. A lot of people quite annoyed by it as well, certainly in the unions, and other Conservatives on the other side raising their eyebrows saying, what's going on here?
Well, he's nothing if not a pragmatist, Keir Starmer. Changes his mind, if you don't like his opinions, he has others. So what is the numbers game here? What's he playing at?
Well, it's interesting because Labour are, of course, 20 points ahead in the polls. And you could say that's a huge amount ahead. Why does he even need to appeal to people who read the Sunday Telegraph? But actually, we're in a position where about 20% of people in this country haven't made up their minds yet in terms of what they are going to do and how they're going to vote. So Keir Starmer is sort of saying, look, the left is probably sealed off. There are very few places they can go if they're annoyed by him. People can stay at home, of course. They could vote for Respect or other small left-wing parties. The middle ground, he thinks, is probably relatively sewn up. Lots of people very annoyed with Rishi Sunak. There are things like immigration, for example, like the economy that he's talking about today as well. He's talking about growth and saying there should be an obsession for a Labour government. That is the centre ground sewn up. So maybe he's looking to the right and saying, actually, there are a lot of people, not only in red wall seats, but also perhaps people disaffected in the south of the country as well, who might think, actually, maybe they'll give Labour their vote, certainly following a lot of the thoughts and policies that his hero Tony Blair has.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, some polling at today's show, half of Conservative Party deserters, those who voted the Conservative Party in 2019, are going to Labour, the other half, of course, to Reform. And in terms of people dressing up as the second coming of Margaret Thatcher, the one person who perhaps does that the most convincingly, because he is genuinely a Thatcherite, happens to be the other side of the world in a jungle. And there's Rishi Sunak, of course, now saying, well, he'd be welcome to come to the party.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting as well. And I think Rishi Sunak is in a position where his own convictions, his own policies and the things that he wants to do are no longer really an option. And a lot of the things that he feels he has to do, like Rwanda, are moving forward. We'll see a statement about that at 3:30 in the House of Commons today.
Well, he's sticking to Rwanda, like a dog with a bone. But he's disappearing down a bad rabbit hole, it seems to me. I mean, as I keep saying, if you read the papers yesterday, it seems like no one in the Palace of Westminster, be they MPs or peers of the realm, believe for a second we're ever going to get a single migrant to Rwanda. So the more effort that Sunak puts into trying to get someone there, the more he will end up being humiliated. Yeah. Again, the question is, what's he playing at? Well,
he feels trapped, I think, and we're in a situation, Kevin, where this is about politics. It's not about policy. It's about whether people would put the letters into the 1922 committee chairman, Sir Graham Brady, whether there could be a possible coup here in the Conservative Party. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think Rishi Sunak is scared of it. The Rwanda policy, I did a programme yesterday, 3 hours, talking a lot about this, and not a single person rang me or texted me or tweeted me to say, do you know what, I agree with the Rwanda policy. I think it's a really good idea. I think that's what we should be doing. I think the original concept was something a lot of people got on board with, but now we're in a situation where it's sort of run out of road. We're another £15 million probably going to the Rwandans in the next few days. People are annoyed about that. A big battle in not just the House of Commons, but certainly in the House of Lords as well, what the legislation actually looks like, what the treaty looks like. We've got the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, heading out to Rwanda in the next couple of days. It's a total mess.
It's call me naive, but why don't they just put a load of migrants on a plane and fly them to Rwanda?
They can't legally.
And then say to the ECH, what you're going to do about it?
Some people, I mean, many people have
That's
said
what
that.
the other
that's the
European
option.
countries do.
And we've ignored the ECHR previously. The fact is that, well, the Supreme Court of this country said we can't do it, Kevin. And if you're the Prime Minister, you're going to say, actually, the Supreme Court of this country is wrong and we're going to overrule it. And that would have major implications for the rule of law.
But I thought his line was to circumnavigate human rights laws when it came to the Rwanda scheme.
Well, his plan is now to do that through legislation and to say that, look, there are laws that are there.
He wants to pass this law to say Rwanda is safe.
Is a safe country.
Ridiculous.
Well,
a load of MPs who've never even been anywhere near Rwanda are going to have to vote on it being safe. How do they know?
Well, I mean, I've never been to Iraq, but I have opinions on it. I suppose they would argue, but yes,
it's no good. It's no good. You can't just say, yeah, well, basically, I kind of feel that Rwanda's safe, so I'll do that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, the Supreme Court has said it isn't, so they're going over them. They're using the legislative route, the House of Commons, really, to try to say, let's change the law and kind of change the facts.
So no veneration, please, for the Supreme Court, considering the Prime Minister is trying to get round it.
Well, the Supreme Court interprets the law that was there, but if you create new laws, well, then the Supreme Court would have to interpret that. So
why doesn't he give it up?
It's a mess. It is a total mess. You're absolutely right, Kevin. Yeah. It is a total mess.
Talking about lawyers having their field days, they clearly are over Rwanda, lining their pockets with taxpayers' cash for their grandstanding and work. Similar thing going on, of course, at the COVID inquiry, where Boris Johnson will be basically on trial, I think, over the next few days. One of the accusations against him is he spent that February half-term before we actually locked down, instead of dealing with the threat of COVID coming, writing a book on Shakespeare in his grace and favour residence of Chevenix. Is that going to come up, do you think?
It absolutely will. He is certainly saying, and his allies are saying, that this is about scapegoating. This is about saying, you know, who was to blame. I would imagine the old three-word policy of many people at the COVID inquiry, blame Matt Hancock, will be used again. But Boris Johnson certainly is there for 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday. It's going to be a serious and very I think we're going to learn a lot from it as well, but he will go in knowing what he wants to say, knowing who he believes is to blame. He's
submitted 200 pages already, hasn't he, in terms of evidence? And I think he's actually turned around and sort of said, well, Matt did the best that he could. But I think the one thing that really stood out to me, and we're talking about this at the opening of this hour, is this rather incredible headline that when the EU seized our consignment of vaccines and held them hostage, if you will, in the Netherlands and didn't allow them to be shipped here, Boris Johnson actually consulted with spies to conduct a military raid. I mean, these are extraordinary headlines.
There's crazy stuff coming out. We'll see exactly what can be proven. And actually, what Heather Hallett comes up with, the chairwoman of the inquiry, because we've got to remember that lots of people are putting their version across, like former Prime Minister of the country, obviously his version, very, very important, so much so there are 2 days now and there'll be subsequent appearances as well, because we're only in the second of 5 parts of this inquiry. But we're going to get a lot of, and have already got a lot of competing narratives, a lot of people saying different things, blaming different people, and it's up to Baroness Heather Hallett to work out essentially who's telling the truth in all of that. And you can say, look, there's tittle-tattle and all the rest of it, but actually these were very, very important people making very important decisions.
Apparently his 200-plus page submission to the inquiry, a written statement, which obviously precede 2 days on the stand, he sees this as his opportunity to restore his reputation.
Yes.
And what was his reputation?
Well, he was certainly very popular when he became Prime Minister. I don't know, well, various people will say he had an excellent reputation at one stage. He will talk about the vaccines. The thing that is one of the most stinging bits of criticism has come from Dominic Cummings and various other people, referring to him not just at the COVID inquiry, but previously as the trolley, like a supermarket trolley that just goes in different directions, says the last person he had a conversation with, that's what he's going to have, that's who he's going to, the opinion that he's going to put forward. Boris Johnson wants to put forward on Wednesday and Thursday, and he's a big opportunity to do so, to say, actually, this is what happened, this is what I did, this is why I did it. Dominic Cummings, my now former BFF, now mortal enemy, is telling porkies. It'll be really, really interesting what happens. And those 200 pages, Alex, that you talk about in terms of the written evidence, framing this debate, framing the questions that the lead counsel, Hugo Keith Casey, is going to ask him. This is going to be absolutely box office fascinating, and I think we're going to learn a lot from it. The question, of course, is for
the most bombshell testimony so far.
Sorry?
The most bombshell of the testimony so far at the COVID inquiry will be Boris Johnson.
I think so. I mean, Dominic Cummings said some pretty incendiary things, but I think you're absolutely right, Kevin, that, look, all eyes will be on Boris Johnson, what's he said, and also a lot has been said about him, so there's a lot to put to him that other people have said previously.